a coat, and I kind of expected to get all kinds of secrets from him, but you found out it was just through hard work. None of these guys had any big secrets.
There aren't any big secrets. It's hard work.
It's just really hard work. I just remember him saying, "And again." And then he would state some principle. And again. And when I think about Mark Davis, that's the one thing, that phrase, "and again," meaning if you're going to get good at something, you got to do it over and over and over and over again and never quit.
When you look at that face on the screen and the whole face works together, when you smile, the eyes smile, the mouth smiles, your ears even move. This is something, when we do it right, the whole thing lights up, and it's like a magic lantern. You see this face, and it's living.
I was such a fan of Disney and the Sunday night show, and I would go peek through the fence when I was a kid. When I got my driver's license, it was the first place I went to. I would go and literally look through the fence and see the Zorro set or whatever was going on behind the scenes. But I was a musician. I came to animation because I loved music and I loved art, and I drew a little bit and I played music a lot. And when I got a chance to come to the studio, one of my first jobs was working with Wooly Reitherman, and then at lunchtime all these guys would play on the soundstage. And one of my earliest movie memories was they play instruments. It was like the remnants of the Firehouse Five, which was a Dixieland band that Frank Thomas played in, and Ward Kimball, and all these really great guys. And that's when I learned these guys had all these multiple interests. They were adults. They weren't just, guys that were geeks and cartoonists and sat there and drew all day. Frank was this great Dixieland piano player, and Ward was this great trombone player, and I got to play drums with him, which was like a highlight of my life. And I realized that those are the moments that I loved in Disney movies. I loved Peter Pan when Hook comes out and plays the piano to Tinkerbell. And I thought, God, what kind of an animation assignment was that? Because it's like, all right, we got this little fairy that doesn't say anything, and we have a villain that has a hook for a hand. Can you have him sit at the piano and play a tune? Who did that? And then I was at the drive-in theater too, parked next to Glenn, in my car, and loved 101 Dalmatians, completely swept away by that movie by Cruella, by Roger, because he played the piano right. And I later found out it was Frank again. It was the same guy.
As one animator said, thinking back on those days, it said it looked like every last frame of film was manicured. Someone had just worked over to pack every last thing you could into it, and they had.
One of the things that amazed me reading about Walt Disney, reading about the history of the studio, and reading about the history of the art form, is that when he was working on Snow White, one of his biggest fears, and the question he asked was, would audiences be able to emotionally connect with the drawing?
I think the thing that surprised Hollywood was how emotionally engaged they got in the characters, and the scene that really brought that home was Frank Thomas's scenes of the dwarves crying over Snow White's body. And
to see those dwarves come up and take off their hats and get down on their knees and then back away, everybody in that theater was crying. I heard the sobs. I couldn't believe it. Biggest stars in Hollywood, you name, were all wiping the tears out of their eyes.
And I was so impressed because the people that I'd always admired and thought, gee, these are my gods, they're so good, they wanted to meet me.
Let's say they're working on Cinderella. What would they be talking about here over lunch?
Well, I think that historically the studio was at a transitional point. They hadn't done features for years. The war had kind of killed off their foreign markets. And a lot of the films that are now adjusted for inflation, the most successful of all, were not on their original release. Bambi, Pinocchio, Fantasia.
Yeah.
And they were really talking seriously about closing the studio down. And Roy was kind of saying, look, Walt, we can get our money out, we can retire comfortably. And Walt was like, no, we got to start it up again. And I think that all of the team was very grateful to be working on a feature again, because they had been away from it since Bambi.
They were 9 young men at that point. Even though they called them the 9 old men, they were still pretty young when they.
You got to remember that at that point there was still a lot of future to come, and they
didn't know that.
They didn't know that. They were still just figuring out this. Only recently had they been discovering the potential for acting, and every one of them wanted to go deeper. They wanted that chance to get to that emotional core of a character. And I think if I was them and I was sitting around here, you'd be wanting to find a way to get deeper into your character. For Ward, how can I really get this wickedness of this cat? I mean, there's this moment where it lifts the cup and